Welcome back to Awakened Exchanges. I'm your host, Jay Rich, and you're listening to the 9th in my series, Deconstructing the Great Awakening Map. I can't believe how much we've already covered, and I'm trying to power through these last few sections before anyone gets burnt out, and so that we can take some deep dives on some other interesting topics. As always, I'm truly grateful to be here speaking with you, and I hope that you're continuing to enjoy the exchange. You can always email me about other interesting topics and guests. You can use the contact form on our website or contact me on Twitter at Awakened Exchanges. I'll keep bringing you the content that you ask for, and I'm grateful you keep asking. All right, I learned my lesson last week, and I'm going to stick with just doing video for these intros and then intercutting the show with the images that I'm talking about. It's a little time intensive, but it's better than dealing with the camera issues that I have to deal with. So for those of you that saw that on YouTube last week, don't fret, video is coming. I'm just not quite sure the timetable yet. I'm also not sure how many of you noticed last week, but I did retitle those episodes. I'm hoping that the retitling has helped any newcomers feel a little less daunted as they start to explore the map with us. Again, if you haven't already downloaded a high-res copy for yourself, you can still find a copy of the map in our show notes and on our website at Awakened Exchanges. And if you are checking out our Telegram channel or our Twitter feed, you can see the highlights that I've made to the map and how I'm grouping these topics together as we go. I've already given the disclaimers that we're talking about a lot of conspiracy theories in this series, so let's keep that in mind when we're deciding how to weigh these things. My goal in this series is to give you a brief overview of the tons of topics and terms that the map is throwing at you. I think we've done a fairly good job, especially when I've had some good co-hosts, but every segment has had multiple topics that could have had a deep dive episode of their own or multi-part series of their own. So with people asking for that, that's going to be the plan going forward. If I'm really lucky, hopefully I'll have some of the experts on those topics to come in and tell me about their topic of expertise, and hopefully I can ask them some of the questions that you guys would be asking me. I do also want to remind you that I am updating those Telegram feed and the pinned Twitter threads to collect all of the visuals that I'm including with the series. I hope you're still enjoying the threads. Keeps bringing in some new followers each week, and I'm always glad to see you guys join us as well. If you need the link to the Telegram channel, it's in the show notes as well as on the website. I hope that you engage with us in the exchange over there. All right, on a little bit more serious note, I am going to try and keep the intro brief yet again, but I did have to share a little bit of personal information. I'm not sure how it's going to affect the schedule, which is why I'm going to include it here. I think I'm still going to have the time and energy to put out a show next week, but as this episode is going live, I'll have just had to put down my dog, Dakota. This is actually my third attempt at recording this week, so hopefully I will get through this all. She didn't quite make it to her 15th birthday, but she's had and shared a lot of love in her life, and she's not eating anymore. The doctors say that there's nothing they can do besides try and ease some of her pain. I'm going to continue to cherish all of the good memories that we had and hope that her passing brings her energy to wherever that next step takes all of us. I appreciate your understanding during this time. It has been a hard few days, as she was definitely part of the family. So please bear with me a little bit, and thank you for your well wishes. All right, sorry for that down moment, but before we get into the Secret Space program, here's a brief rundown of our sponsors. Please remember that after this ad break, which you can skip as I do give you timestamps in the show notes, we don't have any ad breaks in the middle, so we're not going to break that flow. Supporting our sponsors really can help keep this show going from week to week. So that said, as always, I want to thank each of you personally for your support. Just listening and sharing this podcast with your friends gives me a reason to keep providing the best content that I can. If you have the means and would like to contribute personally, please take a look at our Patreon page, where you're going to get access to exclusive content and deals. There are already bonus videos available, and more are on the way. As for our other sponsors, Awakened Vapes was the first of the Awakened brands and has been helping you modulate your high with CBD-only, high-terpene vape products since 2019. while Genesis Pharms has been making the highest quality medicinal RSO among many other fantastic products, starting with the medical community back before 2010. And last but definitely not least, the Caramel Corn Company, bringing you caramel corn the way it was meant to be. And remember, if you enjoy this podcast, please follow us on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube, or follow us wherever else you're listening. And if you can, leaving a review or a comment on Apple Podcasts really does help spread the word. You can also support us on Patreon or connect with us on the social media of your choice. We are at Awakened Exchanges on Facebook and Instagram, and at Awaken Exchanges on Twitter. All right, now, stay tuned, and thank you for listening to Awakened Exchanges. Genesis Pharms was founded on the belief in cannabis's ability to heal. Genesis Pharms is more than a brand. They're a compassionate community of like-minded folks that generate top-quality cannabis products, made with love and care. Community outreach is always on their mind, and their partnerships with Grow for Vets and Parents for Pot was just the beginning of what they hope to accomplish in the coming years. You can find their products on the best dispensary shelves across the state of Oregon. Their RSO is the most consistent quality in the state. Their tinctures are second to none, and their personal massage oil will have you and your partner coming back for more. Find them on Facebook and Instagram, and ask for them in your local dispensary today. Don't forget to listen to Sean's interview right here on Awakened Exchanges. It's episode number 3. The Caramel Corn Company is bringing you caramel corn the way it was meant to be, made with premium ingredients in small, handcrafted batches and completely gluten-free. Their flavors include original, roasted cashew, salted almond, mixed nut, spicy sriracha, white morsel macadamia, peanut butter, butterscotch, and my personal favorites, chocolate drizzle and raspberry caramel apple. I can't say enough about how delicious this caramel corn is. It makes a great gift any time of the year. You can find them for sale in Portland area Market of Choice locations, and hopefully again online soon when they get stocked back up. Please visit www.caramelcorncompany.com for more information today. And remember, buying local supports small businesses and keeps your money building your community. Last but not least, Awakened Vapes has been bringing you some of the highest quality CBD vapes since ringing in the new year of 2019. I became passionate about cannabis after a car wreck left me with major migraines, and no prescribed pills helped alleviate the symptoms. Having only tried cannabis a handful of times in high school and college, it was a doctor's recommendation that led me to give it another try. Only then did I realize that we'd all been at least a little misled about the health benefits of this amazing plant. Despite an unexpected break because of the vape ban, and then a global health crisis with COVID, the business is stronger than ever, and we invite you to check out our updated website today. We are still offering our 3 varieties with new and improved terpene formulations for enhanced flavor to go along with the custom blended effect profiles. Check back at www.awakenedvapes.com for any updates, and you can always email us about wholesaling or white labeling opportunities. We're back again. This is our 2nd episode on the Secret Space program and our 9th episode deconstructing the Great Awakening map thus far. There's just so much content to cover, it's no wonder people get lost down these rabbit holes. I hope you're still enjoying these, and I'm going to try to power through the rest of the Secret Space program today. We're going to start with the Secret Space Program Alliance, also known as the Heroes of Humanity, who are said to be positive defectors of various SSP groups. And SSP, Secret Space Program, I'm going to be using that a lot because saying it over and over is, well, probably gets old for you too. I talked a little bit about the SSP and the Alliance in episode 18, which was part 1 of this whole Great Awakening map series. But they consist of whatever Solar Warden is, as well as defectors from the others, like the ICC and the Dark Fleet. The map lists these SSP whistleblowers by name, or at least a few of them. And we're going to start with our one and only podcast favorite, Corey Goode. Of course he tops the list. Without him, I don't think that 95% of this storyline would have been told, if that's the right word. I'm trying to walk a fine line and give people the benefit of the doubt here, but please listen to episode 18 for more information on Corey. And because there's a lot to cover in this, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. William Tompkins is actually mentioned twice by the map. Admiral Boda's covert program, which we've first talked about in the last episode, was first publicly revealed in December 2015 by William Tompkins in his book, Selected by Extraterrestrials. In it, Tompkins released a document revealing his mission orders as a disseminator of naval aircraft research and information, and explained how he would deliver briefing packages to various aerospace organizations. Again, this is all first-person narratives by select people that supposedly the memory wipe from the 20 and back program didn't work on, right? At least that's what most of these people are claiming to be. I don't know. I didn't get to read his book. I did give you that information on Admiral Boda, and that is fairly interesting. But again, kernels of truth, and then what people do with it. You know what I mean? People want to be more important. And that's when you got to start taking things with a grain of salt. The next name is Pete Peterson. He's a Project Camelot interviewee that talks about the CIA's SRI, or Stargate program, and how they recruited people for remote viewing or remote influencing programs. He also talks a lot about advanced technology and robotics that he claims to have been working on. He spouted a lot of outlandish claims and seemed to blame Obama for a lot of things. There are just too many other names here for me to give him a lot of time, especially as everything I heard him talk about sounded more like a sci-fi movie than anything he could provide evidence on. So Emery Smith. Emery claims a fairly fantastic life leading up to him serving under classified surgeons in the United States Air Force. I couldn't confirm that from any other source, short of sending out a request to the Air Force, which I did not attempt. So I moved on to the next name, which Daniel, literally, that's all the map says, Daniel. After doing some researching, even though there's only one name, I assume that he means Daniel List, L-I-S-Z-T, otherwise known as Dark Journalist, whom you can find on darkjournalist.com. I watched the 36-minute intro video while I was working on some of this, and it really does break down a lot of the deep state and secret space program conspiracy theories, at the very least. It's an interesting place to start, but again, weigh your information, okay? Listen, do the research, keep your mind balanced, all right? Henry Deacon is actually a pseudonym that comes from the TV series Eureka. They use this name for a Liverpool physicist that was supposedly interviewed off the record by Project Camelot. Off the record means I can't even see the interview to judge by his face and his demeanor and his actions, his body language, whether or not I can remotely believe something he says. So I'm just moving on. Bruce Jacob, fairly common name, so common in fact, I could not locate anything to tie this name specifically to the secret space program. I spend a lot of time preparing these episode notes and this brief overview. And I try and learn as much as I can in a cursory kind of way so that I can help people do their own research when they ask me, which means I learn a lot of things that I don't include in the episodes. And when nothing presented itself within a reasonable amount of time, I just decided to go to the next name, which was Sergeant Bob Dean. Commander Sergeant Major Dean served 28 years in the Army before retiring. He claims to have had cosmic top secret clearance while he was in the Army, so it's no wonder that he went on to consider himself a UFO researcher until his death in 2018. By the way, cosmic is an abbreviation for control of secret material in an international command and is an actual NATO classification, if that's what he was claiming to be. Again, another whistleblower. He has a big career, but the evidence of what he was saying is just basically his word. And that seems to be how it is with every person on this list. So I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I'm just going to keep powering through to Sergeant Clifford Stone, which, according to exopedia.com, that's EXOPAEDIA.com, Specialist Sergeant Clifford Stone was a UFO researcher and whistleblower. He spent 22 years serving in the U.S. Army from 1969 to 1990, which was 21 years, but I'm guessing it was just over that, but whatever. Anyway, he says that he was covertly assigned to elite UFO crash retrieval teams known as Project Moondust and Project Bluefly. Those were two more rabbit holes I wasn't going to try and unravel on this already convoluted journey. So if you want to know more, go check out Exopedia. I just spelled it out for you. Or go to ufoevidence.org. They have a lot on both of those projects, which would probably be multi-part series if I were to try and cover them by themselves as well. So Randy Kramer, which I found out more about him on unsolvedmysteries.world, and no, that is no relation to the beloved TV show or Robert Stack. But they did have the best bio I could find on Randy here, who claims to have been taken aboard one of the Black Triangle craft and transported to live on Mars for 17 years. After he had been recruited to become a super soldier, of course. Enough said. Captain Mark Richards was another Project Camelot interviewee. I listened to some of Carrie Cassidy relaying her interview with Mark, and I say relaying her interview because she's not allowed to bring recording devices inside the prison that he's currently living in. RationalWiki.org says that he is a convicted murderer serving life without parole in a California state prison known as Solano at Vacaville in California. He prefers to be known as Captain Richards, although he never served in the military. After graduating from high school in 1971, he attended the College of Marin and then graduated from Dominican College in San Rafael in 1976. He has spun multiple bizarre yarns about his service in the so-called secret space program, battling alien forces, in addition to his imaginary service in the U.S. Navy. He was convicted of killing a man in 1982 for financial gain and seems to have been spinning this story in some attempt for a pardon. He doesn't seem to have much credibility, and I know that the conspiracy theorists would say that's just what they want you to think. However, that doesn't change the fact that I do think it. So, with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and move to Mark McClandish. You can see his art and find out more about him at Mark McClandish, that's MarkMcClandish.com, but he believes that, quote, 0 point energy is the power source behind the secret space program and the trump card of the breakaway civilization. How the back engineering of off-world technology created a powerful leverage for corporations to take over control of world government, establish an internationally manned secret space program, and breakaway civilization. Based on eyewitness accounts and insider information, Mr. McClandish takes the audience through a series of revelations as to how remarkable this breakthrough technology may have been back-engineered from recovered or captured off-world vehicles, enabled aerospace and defense-related corporations to hijack control of the government worldwide, create a special access-only secret space program, and develop a breakaway civilization with its own goals and agenda. And you can probably guess my personal opinion at this, as well as the fact that I had to try and stumble through so many badly worded sentences and run-ons and typos that I apologize for how that sounded, but you can go ahead and check out his website for yourself. Tony Rodriguez is mentioned twice on the map, once as a Dark Fleet whistleblower and once right here. He's easily found at TonyRodriguez.com, but it's misspelled with a Z on the map itself. So remember, when you're going to the website, don't listen to the map. It's actually TonyRodriguez.com. While I believe that Corey Good also mentioned a 20-year tour, I didn't get into a lot of the details when I was writing this quick part up. A 20-year tour is an expression used to describe a timeline served from the date when someone is originally kidnapped all the way through their service in the SSP, and then when they're returned to the consciousness of their younger self. All right? So Tony Rodriguez claims that he was abducted from his home in Michigan at the age of 10 and went through a torturous MK-Ultra type training program where he was then shipped to Peru to do intuitive work in drug running, and was then taken to Seattle where he was owned as a sex slave for a satanic worshipping elite. That's all it says. But he was then sold off to the secret space program where he served a short time on Mars as a support soldier for Mars Colony Corp. When the Mars program was canceled, he was traded off to the Ceres Colony Corp, where he lived for over a decade. He worked on German ships as a repairman and eventually cargo engineer on an interstellar trade mission. After 20 years, he was returned to his bed at the age of 10, and Tony has since been an advisor to foundations on the pedogate elite practices in an effort to stop human trafficking, and has worked with hundreds of people with similar types of memories. I thought about trying to leave in the spelling errors and pronounce them, but I decided that even if retuning sounds cool, I should probably say returning and give my best to give his true intentions and not what was on the written page. Okay. Niara Isley is actually an example of one of the more well-reported people on this list. I'm going to include a mirror.co.uk article in the show notes, but quoting from it here, a former U.S. Air Force worker has claimed she was abducted by reptile aliens who raped her on the moon countless times. Niara Isley, who worked as a radar tracking officer, said she was snatched by a humanoid with a tail and taken to a secret base on the far side of the moon. While there, she was made to have sex with aliens and lift boxes. Miss Isley told how she worked at the Tonopah test range in Nevada, but said she could recall very little detail about her time there. She claims security guards raped her in front of an audience after she was jabbed in the neck with a mystery drug while in an underground lair. And then she was raped on the moon, she said. Miss Isley described the bizarre and shocking series of incidents under hypnosis. In taped interviews with Aquarian Radio, she claimed that she was taken into space 8 to 10 times over several months when she was 25 years old. In addition, she said the gray aliens were present, helping with the work, as well as human personnel who were also forced to help the reptilians do their bidding on the moon. After the abductions, she said that she couldn't remember much of what had happened, including aspects of her work, leading her to think her memory had been wiped. These incidents stopped in 1980, she said. Frightening, even if hypnotically induced. I don't want to discount what she's saying. So I'm going to talk about Edgar Mitchell, who, if American history were actually taught, Edgar Mitchell would probably be one of the most famous people on this list. He was a United States Navy officer, aviator, test pilot, aeronautical engineer, ufologist, and NASA astronaut. As the lunar module pilot of Apollo 14, he spent 9 hours working on the lunar surface in the Fra Mauro Highlands region, making him the 6th person to walk on the moon. The legacy of his post-NASA scientific and parapsychology work is carried on through the Institute of Noetic Sciences. He became an outspoken proponent of ufology, and his most wild claim is probably that a cabal of elites have been studying recovered alien bodies for years and have done so without briefing any U.S. presidents since JFK. I'm including a separate article in the show notes with a collection of his claims, but it is especially hard to dismiss people like him that actually have legitimate credentials. Edgar Mitchell is one of those nuggets of truth people to me, and I think he's one of the things that suck in a lot of regular people. It does, even if there's a kernel, it is a fascinating story. Probably the best one on this list, in my opinion. All right. Clark McClelland, which is McClelland, is a former NASA engineer who, according to dailymail.co.uk, claims he saw a 9-foot alien while monitoring a space mission in 1991. Clark McClelland was allegedly part of a team based at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida, when he spotted the extraterrestrial humanoid. The entity, he says, stood on 2 legs and approached 2 U.S. astronauts that he would not name. For 1 minute and 7 seconds, all in the Space Shuttle Bay. It does fit in with a lot of those NASA supposedly doctored images, programs, and all that stuff, but again, there's no proof, there's no evidence, there's nothing, and I don't know this guy from anybody else. So Brian O'Leary it is, who was a former trainee in the Apollo programs in the 1960s, but did not actually get to fly a mission. Fast forward to 2001, we at least know he has some credentials in the past, but according to the National Space Society at space.nss.org, O'Leary made the decision to be interviewed for a Fox News program titled Conspiracy Theory: Did We Land on the Moon? The former astronaut did believe that, quote, the moon landings could have been faked, but that the possibility was remote. In this special, he publicly stated these beliefs in a few seconds of TV time, and while O'Leary had done plenty of television work before, he had expounded on plenty of controversial topics even, such as free energy and extraterrestrials, as he believed in both, but this Fox News interview apparently got him shunned from the space community. That takes us to Paul Hellyer, who, according to express.co.uk, Hellyer made a detailed deathbed confession of how he was shown inside an alien flying saucer at the top-secret Area 51 military base. Hellyer, then the 92-year-old former Canadian Minister of Defense, revealed the astonishing story just before his death. From a neurological illness, of course. All right. Again, though, someone who might have been in the know at one point in time, and it's just enough of a crumb where you're asking the questions, you know? Especially since I do think the government keeps stuff from us. I'm curious how much and of what sort, but 92-year-old with a neurological disease, who knows what he's remembering and what he's putting together. So next we have Carol Rosin, who was legitimately someone of good standing as well. According to Wikipedia, Dr. Rosen is the founder of the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space, and also works as a speaker, author, educator, child psychologist, futurist, and military strategist. She was also the first female executive of an aerospace company, working as a corporate manager of Fairchild Industries. According to TrendCelebNow.com, Carol is best known as an astrologer. She was also the spokesperson for Wernher von Braun while he was dying of cancer. So, if you don't know who he is or why he might have information, prepare yourself to go down a giant rabbit hole when you do your own research, because that's a doozy. I'll just leave it at this. He was the top Nazi scientist, and without him, we wouldn't have made it to the moon in 1969. But that takes us to John Lear, who is another legitimate person, and the last name on this long list. According to a How Stuff Works article, which I'm also including in the show notes, his more recent claims include that a ruthless secret government controls the world. Among other nefarious activities, it runs the international drug trade and has unleashed AIDS, as well as other deadly diseases, as population-reducing measures. Its ultimate goal is to turn the Earth and surrounding planets into slave labor camps. For some time, this secret government has been in contact with alien races, allowing the aliens to abduct humans in exchange for advanced alien technology. And that's just the beginning. I don't even know what else to say. So let's move on to the technology section. And in this section, I'm going to look at some of the technologies that the secret space program is supposedly hiding from the rest of humanity. The first of those technologies is anti-gravity. Anti-gravity is a hypothetical phenomenon of creating a place or object that is free from the force of gravity. It does not refer to the lack of weight under gravity experienced in freefall or orbit, or to balancing the force of gravity with some other force, such as electromagnetism or aerodynamic lift. The theory is that UFOs use some sort of other advanced technology to create this anti-gravity field. Bob Lazar mentioned element 115. And this was at a time when it wasn't even proven to exist. Now we have made particles, but its half-life is so quick that it just disappears like that. But some claim that Bob Lazar actually made off with a piece of this, which is why he was able to be left alone for so long to do his own things and do his own patents and do his own random works after the government had already tried to kill his credibility. So I don't know what it would use or how that goes about it, but it would be very cool if some other world, element 115, was just a naturally produced resource, and that's how it was going about. But I guess we shall see, right? Government saying June 25th, that's like 2.5 months away. Yeah, we'll see. According to Inverse.com, zero-point energy, also known as ground state energy, could be the greatest gift the quantum world could ever give us. It's a byproduct of the fact that subatomic particles don't really behave like single particles, but like waves, constantly flitting between different energy states. This means even the seemingly empty vacuum of space is actually a roiling sea of virtual particles fluctuating in and out of existence, and all those fluctuations require energy. If there's as much energy in those fluctuations as some, though definitely not all, physicists believe, and if we could ever learn how to tap into this phenomenon, we could gain access to an unparalleled source of energy. Zero-point energy could power the planet with the strength of multiple suns, making it easy for us to solve Earth's energy problems forever, or to travel beyond the solar system and take our place among the stars. The map also claims that time travel is possible via temporal drives. Of course, the only real source I could find about temporal drives that wasn't, and I use that term lightly, related to a sci-fi story, was that of Corey Goode, as Goode confirmed that at least one ship, the Summerfield, uses a temporal drive based on, and I quote, principles of quantum entanglement between certain isotopes. These principles are supposedly also used for interstellar navigation. Also, according to Good, I quote, it wasn't until the 50s that they were able to start transporting people consistently without them suffering. I believe they called it temporal dementia. People would teleport intact from here to Mars. They would look fine, but then after a number of days, they would suffer some sort of dementia. They would call temporal dementia, and the Germans did a lot of work in this field that helped us figure out how to do this properly, them working alongside the ET allies. And now you know why, if you haven't listened to the previous episode on Corey, why he's a little problematic. I didn't dig deeper into the specifics, but apparently the anti-aging scientists can relax a little because we already have advanced healing technologies that they're going to release to us after the Great Solar Flash. So we're all good. They're just going to, elongate our telomeres right there, right? Consciousness-assisted technology, the next thing listed, is a bit of a science fact already. It's things like Elon Musk's Neuralink that are moving us into this next frontier. People may not only be able to control objects or computers with their thoughts, we may actually be able to read each other's thoughts as well. It will definitely change the way society is structured and the way we treat each other. I hope for the better, but I'm guessing we're going to find out even in my lifetime. And while I'm sure that smart glass pads sounded like a really cool technology to talk about, we've basically had a version of this for a while, right? I'm guessing that Corey Good has claimed that they had some more special tech behind it and all, but we've got iPads, we've got our iPhones, we've got our talking smart glass pads, but, maybe that's not good enough. I don't know. I didn't really feel like digging in deeper to this one, so I'm going to let it be. The next term is Voice of God technology. The exact term was new to me, but the technology was definitely not. I'm going to read a little article from thedailycoin.org that I'm also going to include in the show notes. I quote, people laughed years ago when former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura hosted Dr. Robert Duncan on his conspiracy theory TV show, and Dr. Duncan discussed what he called the Voice of God weapon, technology that he supposedly helped develop, allegedly used during the Iraq War by supposedly beaming Allah's voice into the heads of Iraqi soldiers, telling them to drop their weapons. Dr. Duncan tells us they reportedly followed Allah's commands, not knowing they were coming from the United States military. While they've discussed voice-to-skull technology in some of their stories before, this new story over at Daily Mail reports that the U.S. Marines have revealed their plans for a plasma control weapon that can shout at people from 3,000 feet away. Then it turned out to temporarily blind them, or even turned up full blast to quite literally melt people's skin off of them, causing nearly instant death. With that story giving us even more proof of Steve Quayle's warnings that the technologies we're officially being shown now are at least 10 years and sometimes 20 or more years behind the technologies that have already been developed. Sadly, I actually think this one falls squarely into the realm of science fact as well. I mean, we are only being shown the technology they want to show us. They have been doing lots of research projects that they just don't admit to us. Voice-to-skull technology, beaming sound, those kind of patents exist. Those kind of things are there. I don't put it out of the realm of possibility that they're messing with early versions of this. So let's talk about black-shelved patents, because maybe this is one of them. Black-shelved patents isn't a term for any specific technology that's being withheld from us, but it refers to the fact that the U.S. can just hide patents from us for basically no reason, and then force their inventors to stop working on them and never talk about them again. According to a Slate.com article, As of 2017, according to statistics reported by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and published by the Federation of American Scientists, there were 5,784 patents that you can't see. They're the U.S. government's cache of inventions under secrecy orders, and while we don't know what they're for, the once secret patents recently made public have included laser tracking systems, a warhead production method, an anti-radar jamming apparatus, a stronger net, and just so many others. Invention secrecy in the U.S. dates back to at least the 1930s, but it really took off in the 40s when the development of nuclear weapons was shrouded in classification. It became official policy in 1952 with the invention of the Secrecy Act, which allows the USPTO to keep patents deemed detrimental to the national security on lockdown indefinitely. I don't suspect that our government is going to be much more forthcoming anytime soon. And I know a lot of you are going to think Star Trek when I mention food replicators next, but it could actually possibly happen. It's just a rearrangement of molecules, right? That said, I'm actually going to include an article from universetoday.com that talks about when NASA awarded a $125,000 6-month grant to the Systems and Materials Research Corporation to design a 3D printer capable of printing pizza from 30-year shelf-stable foodstuffs. The proteins would be provided by cartridge injectors filled with organic base powders derived from algae, insects, and grass. Hyperdimensional physics is the next term, and it's a term that Richard Hoagland, who, if you listened to the last episode, you're familiar with by now, is credited with talking about. I talked about hyperdimensional physics briefly in the last episode, but it's basically the proposed form of physics which Hoagland claims represents a more complete implementation of James Clerk Maxwell's original 20 quaternion equations, instead of the ones that were amended by Olivier Heaviside and are commonly taught today. Again, these ideas are rejected by mainstream physics as unfounded. But who's mainstream physics to say? I mean, Eric Weinstein just released a amazing theory of everything on April Fool's Day, because why not celebrate the real fools? And I hope people are out there trying to solve this equation now. I do not know that hyperdimensional physics will play a part, though. The last piece of technology we're going to talk about are the over-unity devices. Basically, that's any type of device that produces more energy than it consumes, thereby theoretically producing free energy. There are some simple devices that are out there that can be made, but they don't normally provide enough energy to be of use. We've talked a little bit about intergalactic parties back in episode 20, the third in the map series, but I'm going to go ahead and recap a little bit as needed. Now, these intergalactic parties start with the Global Galactic League of Nations, which is a NATO-type group, which operates with ICC outside of the solar system. It's the lowest rung of the SSP, which Corey Goode called kind of a dummy group that they can offer lesser nations to appease them into keeping the secret. Now, the next group are the Black Project Aerospace Corporations, who apparently help make these things possible. The three listed on the map are Skunk Works, which, according to Wikipedia, is an official pseudonym for Lockheed Martin's Advanced Development Program, which was formerly called Lockheed Advanced Development Projects. It is responsible for a number of aircraft designs, beginning with the P-38 Lightning in 1939 and the P-80 Shooting Star in 1943. Skunk Work engineers subsequently developed the U-2, SR-71 Blackbird, F-117 Nighthawk, F-22 Raptor, F-35 Lightning II, and that latter one being used in the air forces of several countries today. The Skunk Works name was actually taken from the Moonshine Factory in the comic strip Little Abner. The designation Skunk Works is widely used in business, engineering, and technical fields to describe a group within an organization given a high degree of autonomy and unhampered by bureaucracy with the task of working on advanced or secret projects. General Dynamics Corporations is an American aerospace and defense corporation. As of 2019, it was the 5th largest defense contractor in the United States and the 6th largest in the world. By sales, anyway. The company ranked number 92 in the 2019 Fortune 500 list of the largest United States corporations by total revenue. They go ahead and list Lockheed Martin. I'm not going to go back over Lockheed Martin simply because it would be their Skunk Works division that we just spoke about that would be responsible for it all. It makes me wonder if 5D didn't lose track of some of his information along his journey to enlightenment as he duplicated things so close together sometimes. So I'm going to move on to the ICC, or the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, which are off-world or off-planet corporations. We also touched on them briefly in episode 18, or part 1 of this whole GAM thing. The ICC are the corporations or the super corporate board that controls all of the off-world corporate space programs, and that have established intergalactic trade with 900 plus extraterrestrial races, according to the map. You remember some of that from 6 weeks ago, right? Yeah, you haven't lost track yet, like I have, or obviously 5D has, as he's trying to cram all of this information into this tiny space. I think that's part of why this map feels disorienting. By the time you research something, you seem to be going in circles, and therefore it starts to reinforce itself because it all seems to confirm information that you've already seen before the first time around. So you're seeing this stuff, and it's this self-reinforcing feedback loop. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the Dark Fleet, which is compared to, the Empire in Star Wars. They conquer and control entire star systems. In episode 18, we heard them described as a super secret group that works mainly outside the solar system, in which Corey Good groups all of the military black ops groups from around the world into, and they're responsible for any offensive space fleet that operates beyond our solar system. They believe in service to the self. 5D calls them negative beings, and also accuses them of speaking in German. Cliche? Maybe, but if you also tie in the breakaway Nazi civilizations that are mentioned here, maybe they took their Earth language from them. They are also said to use a Nazi command structure too, so maybe it makes sense. Then again, does any of this? Well, the Draco and Reptilian Alliance are included in this group and are said to be responsible for any of the black wedge or pumpkin seed shaped craft that you hear about in any UFO reports. And while I could find nothing on the Orion Syndicate that was listed other than the Star Trek universe, I have to at least mention them because, the map does. As for, technology and personnel, the Dark Fleet is apparently supplied by the ICC because it's all just about the money, right? Who cares about the slaves that are being, sent to the secret space program? They're, just going to get sent back in 20 years with their memories wiped anyway. Well, that's not all, though. The Dark Fleet and the ICC have apparently occupied several moons of Saturn now, and friend of the podcast, Nick Hinton, would probably have more relevant questions about what they're doing there than I could come up with, though. I know you are definitely not going to want to be involved in the secret space program because most of us humans are just used as that slave labor force I was just talking about. It's generational at this point, so talk about a caste system, right? This off-planet human slave trade is supposedly massive. 5D says on the map that, quote, humans are one of the most valuable commodities across the galaxy. And how are they getting us, you ask? Well, also according to the map, apparently reptilian tankers released mind control gas over developing communities. and an article from bendedreality.com that I'm going to go ahead and include in the show notes as well. Those reptilian tankers are dispensing a mixture of 4 gases over Oceanside and Carlsbad, California. These gases are used for mind control of the population and disbursement of viruses. You've seen those reptilian contrails, right? Our secret government also sprays chemicals into the air that aid in detection of UFOs as they disturb the atmosphere, and for other more nefarious purposes, such as nanotechnology, which can be weaponized. Contrails also have the added benefit of concealing the ongoing wars in space between our own forces and those of the Black Hat ETs. You know, well-established facts they teach us every day in school, right? Well, I don't quite know where to put this, so I'm going to go ahead and mention Ares Prime right here, which the map says is a base on Mars, apparently built into a crater that they have to make sure not to encroach on the native Martians' territory. I didn't want to go into Randy Kramer much earlier, but this is the guy who claimed to be transported to Mars for 17 years. All of this comes from him. You can see why I started to gloss over. Once there's a certain amount of lack of evidence, it just makes more sense if I hit delete and move on. So, the last section that we're going to in this massive secret space program, I'm going to go ahead and call the random mentions of the week, since I can't jam them together in any of the other sections. I might have to do this in some of the other episodes, but it does help keep the show a little bit more condensed and hopefully keeps me from trying to overdo myself a little bit. But these are some of the more entertaining ones, I think. We're going to go ahead and start with Oumuamua, which the map claims was a derelict ship from the ancient builder race that's 1 billion years old. The map also says that it entered through the outer energetic barrier and was intercepted by the SSP Alliance in 2018. Avi Loeb, who is a Harvard astrophysicist, went on 2 of my favorite podcasts. First, the Lex Friedman podcast, and then on to the Joe Rogan Experience, talking about this object and asserting that we do not know what it was. He believes that it is a manufactured object of some sort, but an article from phys.org, which was published the same day I was outlining this topic, claims to have found an answer to the question, saying it is a piece of a Pluto-like planet. I think Avi Loeb would still beg to differ, and where's the proof either way? Go listen to what Avi talks about in either of those episodes, and tell me you're not at least interested in learning more. Next is a topic that I'm probably going to cover in the next series as well, but it's Maldek, which is Maldek. The map says Maldek was a super-Earth that was exploded in a war with Mars. I'm going to have to defer to aetherius.org, which is aetherius.org, and the article that I'm going to include in the show notes, which they adapted from what I believe was the original source of all of this, The 9 Freedoms, a book by George King. I'm going to read this fairly lengthy section from Aetherius, but I think it's worth hearing at least once. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, there was another planet in this solar system about the size of Earth, which made its orbit between Mars and Jupiter. It was a green and prosperous world inhabited by a people who had not reached a state of really advanced culture, but had nevertheless attained a stage which afforded an abundance of necessities which made life comparatively comfortable for all. They studied the philosophies and dabbled in the sciences as we do, except that these people were more advanced in many ways than we are. The planet was so highly mechanized that robots took care of all of the menial tasks. The inhabitants had discovered a rudimentary form of space travel that could control their weather so that drought and famine became long forgotten. The majority, having an abundance of food and having no menial tasks to perform, soon became content to while away their time in the sun. They became, in comparison with higher planetary cultures, a selfish, lackadaisical people seeking after their own enjoyment, as do the majority of people on Earth today. Then the diseases came. It probably started subtly in the mind of those few men of science who shunned procrastination of the majority in a fervent search for material conquest, thus leaving themselves open to the incurable affliction. The mental disease manifested itself as lust for greater power. They found it. They exploded a hydrogen bomb and completely destroyed the planet Maldek and murdered their whole populace in one blinding flash of searing flame. All that is now left of that beautiful planet is the asteroid belt. The people who inhabited Maldek were suddenly released onto their different etheric planes. According to the perfect law of karma, these people had to reincarnate again under strict limitation upon another planet in the solar system. The Earth was approached. The gods made an appeal to the Earth as an intelligence, asking if she would be willing to take compassion upon the killers of Maldek and agreed to their reincarnation upon her back. In her great merciful compassion, she agreed, thereby accepting thousands of years of limitation so that these lesser life forms could gain essential experience. The gods then approached the true inhabitants of Earth, a highly cultured race of individuals called Adamic Man, who also agreed to cooperate with the coming to Earth of the people from Maldek. Gradually, those too lazy to stop the shocking cosmic crime of the destruction of Maldek, and those who had actually brought it about, were reincarnated upon Earth. Adamic Man stayed for a time, giving instruction, guidance, and help, and then, in accordance with divine law, left the new inhabitants of Earth to their own devices. That book I mentioned, The 9 Freedoms, just so happens to be published in 1961 at the height of the Cold War and before the Cuban Missile Crisis. You think that just maybe had something to do with the vision of a nuclear holocaust? Maybe it's just me. I think that parable turns into crazy conspiracy theory, or maybe you believe in the channeling side of it. Maybe it just came in because it was the right moment. I'm going to leave that to you and your research. If you read the book and want to talk about it, let me know. Maybe I'll have you on the show. I'm going to also touch on human ET hybrid cloning in this section. The map mentions 2 specific types that I would assume have 2 motives from the various theories I've run across. The first is the ET Greys and the Nordic, where the Greys have been theorized to either be from a similar civilization, if not maybe being us from the future or another dimension, and as an us that can no longer reproduce because of their technological advances, they're now trying to save themselves through these hybrid programs. The other of these cloning technologies, or theories, I guess, would be the Saurians and the Nordics. The Saurians are apparently a reptilian race, and while I couldn't find any other concrete theories or speculation on their reasoning, if you can consider anything in this series concrete in any way, that said, they probably don't blend well right now, so maybe they're trying to strengthen their DNA while being able to infiltrate humanity. That's where I'd go if I were writing the script, at least from the ramblings that I could find. Let's go ahead and get on to breakaway civilizations. What if that's what some of the ancient aliens were up to? The map says that there's a Mayan breakaway group, and that the proof is in the cylindrical stone ships. Yeah. The main source on this one, I'm guessing you have a pretty good idea. The one, the only Corey Good. Which is why I'm gonna move on. And even though I have to mention it because it's on the map, there's not much to say about portals for this episode. It's just a wide open mess, and that's all I'm going to say. We do get into jump portals or jump stations in the next episode or 2. And at least there's a little bit more I can get into. I just like this next phrase, which I'm guessing is actually keyed into it as well. I wasn't really sure how to address it. The phrase is IP address Stargate key. There doesn't seem to be any references to that besides the map itself. So I'm guessing that you need an IP address kind of device to dial the Stargate, which would be the portal, which would give us the jump address or the jump portals. It's just stringing shit together at this point. And I know you think I'm just getting lazy by letting all these random topics that fall to the end so I can just try and wrap it all up. But just so you know, I am putting in the work. I'm going to end today on Majestic MJ12. And I'm including a link to a Crystal Links page where you can start to dive deeper into MJ12, but a lot of you are already going to know at least a little bit. It is a nearly endless rabbit hole of a topic, and it all starts with documents that may or may not be forged in a group that was supposedly created by President Truman and Secretary of Defense James Forrestal, who is the supervisor of Admiral Boda from last week's episode. I think I'll mostly let you dive into this on your own, but since the map does mention a name in connection to it, I want to talk a little bit about Bobby Ray Inman. Bobby Ray Inman is a retired United States Navy admiral who held several influential positions in the United States intelligence community. According to the Disclosure Wiki, Dr. Stephen Greer, in his book Unacknowledged, an expose of the world's greatest secret, quotes that an entity established by President Eisenhower and Nelson Rockefeller in 1956 as Majestic, or MJ-12, has become the largest RICO, racketeer-influenced and corrupt organization in the world. Their name has changed from MJ-12, Majestic-12, to C-Corps, to PI-40, and now Magic, M-A-J-I-C. They feel threatened because disclosure and the introduction of zero-point energy would decentralize power from the current oil-based economy. By the end of the Eisenhower era, the UFO and ET projects were becoming increasingly compartmentalized away from legal, constitutional chain of command oversight and control. First-hand witnesses have told us that the president was furious. And, Eisenhower did warn us about the military-industrial complex and was not a huge fan. I know this is actually where I feel that change in tide would have come about. But back to the Disclosure Wiki and Dr. Stephen Greer, they say that there's a committee of 200 or 300 people who are on the policy board for this issue. Admiral Bobby Ray Inman, who went from the head of the National Security Agency to the board of the SAIC, which is one of the crown jewels of this covert entity, Magic, is a member. So is Admiral Harry Train, George Bush Sr., Dick Cheney, and Donald Rumsfeld are involved, as is the Prince of Liechtenstein. The Mormon corporate empire has an enormous interest in this subject, and they have much more power than the White House or the Pentagon over this issue, and there are certain secret cells within the Vatican, of course. All right, I think that's about as much as I can get into without going crazy this week. I hope your brain unscrambles by the end of your next REM cycle too. I really appreciate you taking this journey with me, and I hope that you join me back here next week as we try to get a little bit closer to wrapping up this series. Now, take care, everyone. Thank you again, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to me yet again. I hope you're enjoying exploring the Great Awakening map as much as I am, and I hope that you have enjoyed the Secret Space program, because we're going to move on next week and start the Galactic Federation, as well as the Moon, Mars, and a few other random topics. I really hope you're going to join us. I want to give a special thanks to all of our listeners. You are the reason I'm doing this. Please tell your friends about us, follow us on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube, or wherever else you're listening. And if you can, please leave us a comment or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really will help with visibility. You can also support us on Patreon or connect with us on the social media of your choice. We are at Awakened Exchanges on Facebook and Instagram, and at Awaken Exchanges on Twitter. Thanks again. Have a blessed day.